Welcome to Fantasia, home of the Melodious. My name's Azallea, and today, gonna be bringing you guys another update to my Melodious deck. Now, because it's the new year, and because Link Summoning wasn't released too long ago, I decided to give you guys a little treat and go back to my roots and give you guys a pure Melodious deck profile. I know a lot of you guys have been requesting this over like the past year and a half, that ever since I stopped making them. But here we go. Without any further ado, let's just jump right into this. So, starting off, we are playing with 3 copies of Aria, the Melodious Diva. Now, Aria is fantastic in this deck because she provides all of our Melodious monsters with targeting protection and protection from battle. So she is very important to set up very early on, and I play 3 copies because you always want to have a copy in your deck that you can summon out with something like First Move in Solo or Ties of the Brethren. Okay, so moving on, we're also playing 3 copies of Soprano, the Melodious Songstress. You need to have 3 Soprano because she is one of the key cards in the deck. She helps recycle resources when she's special summoned by adding a Melodious monster from your graveyard to your hand, and she allows us to go for fusion plays. Unfortunately, you can't fuse from the hand, but we have enough ways to kind of swarm the field so you can always have her effect be live. So 3 copies of that is definitely necessary. Okay, so the next card that we play is going to be 3 copies of Cannon, the Melodious Diva. Cannon is very important because not only does she help swarm the field, but she has a good level, a level 4, so we can go for some rank 4 plays, but she's also a very good candidate for Ties of the Brethren for you to summon out monsters like Aria and Soprano straight from your deck. So that's why you play 3 copies of her. The next card that we play is 3 copies of Sonata, the Melodious Diva. Now, Sonata, same effect as Cannon, you can special summon her straight from your hand if you control another Melodious monster. But the thing about Sonata that's really good is that you can special summon her more than once per turn. Cannon has a once per turn restriction on her summon effect, but you can continuously swarm Sonatas to the field. The only downside is that she is a level 3, so you can't go into like rank 4 plays, but she's also a very good candidate for going to Link summons with, because you can easily just summon a bunch of her to your side of the field. She's also a level 3 monster, which is good for things like Transmodify, because that means if you have Sonata and Transmodify, you can summon Soprano straight from your deck, and then add the Sonata back and go and summon her again. So that's why she actually works out pretty well. We also play 1 copy of Tam Tam, the Melodious Diva. Because I am playing Ties of the Brethren in this deck, Tam Tam is just another fantastic target to help you search out a polymerization from your deck and then potentially get rid of dead Melodious monsters that are stuck in your hand, potentially extra copies of Aria or things that you have to normal summon in order to get out to your side of the field. Okay, so the other one-ofs that I play is 1 copy of Elegy, the Melodious Diva. I absolutely hate running this card, but she's pretty good situationally, mostly because we are running Transmodify, and instead of just having Sonata as a target for Transmodify, you can use any of your level 4 Melodious monsters and go into Elegy. And she also covers what Aria doesn't, which is protecting from destruction effects, things like Dark Hole, Raigeki, and stuff like that. So if you have Aria and Elegy on your side of the field, you have kind of a soft lock that your opponent will have a little bit of a difficult time getting over unless they have things that are non-targeting, non-destruction removal. Okay, and then the last Melodious monster that I play is 1 copy of Chopina, the Melodious Maestra. And Chopina is fantastic in this deck because she helps recycle your resources. And Melodious have a really difficult time maintaining card advantage. So if you manage to get her out, it's going to be pretty good for you. The easiest way to get her out is actually using Transmodify on a Shiberta, because Shiberta is a fusion monster and she's a level 6. So using Transmodify on your Shiberta brings out your Chopina. It also frees up your extra monster zone so you can go for additional plays with that. But yeah, she is a fantastic addition to the deck, and because we're running things like Tam Tam, and Tam Tam can search out polymerization, if you ever draw into her, you can easily fuse with her using the polymerization and get her to your graveyard. Okay, so that does it for the Melodious monsters. Next up, I'm just going to go into some of the other monsters that I play in this deck. So starting off, we are playing 3 copies of Honest, and the reason why I'm playing Honest and not Score is because Score only helps you in 1 battle because it affects the opponent's monster. And if your opponent's monster is immune to things like, let's say, monster effects, then you're not going to have a good time because Score can't do anything to them. But with Honest, you can hold off an entire battle phase if you use it correctly, and your opponent, attacks with like their strongest monster first, for example, into one of your Melodious monsters. It's also very, very good to use offensively with things like Bloom Prima, because Bloom Prima can attack twice for each battle phase. And she's already a pretty bulky beat stick, so with Honest, it's actually very easy for you to swing for massive amounts of damage. Alright, so next thing we're playing is hand traps. So we're playing 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, because Ghost Ogre, again, just fantastic hand trap, one of my favorites in the game so far. You can also play Ash Blossoms if you have them, but I don't. So I'm playing 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, and then I'm also playing 1 copy of Maxi to wrap things up, because of course Maxi is probably one of the best hand traps in the game, and it helps deter your opponent from going off while giving you some much needed draw power in the deck. Alright, so that does it for all the monsters. Next off, we're going to go into the spell cards. Okay, so for the spell cards, starting off, we are playing 3 copies of First Movement Solo. First Movement Solo is a fantastic card, although it is kind of dead later in the game when you have monsters on your side of the field. But if you don't, and if you're starting out, your first turn, you can summon any Melodious monster straight from your deck as long as it's level 4 or lower. So this is a fantastic way to tutor out Aria from the deck and easily set up your boards. But another way that you can tutor out Aria and your other Melodious monsters from your deck is actually going to be Ties of the Brethren. Now, Ties of the Brethren, you can target 1 level 4 or lower monster that you control. You're paying 2,000 life points for this, so it's kind of a steep cost. But then for the rest of the turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters. Also, you special summon 2 monsters from your deck with the same type, attribute, and level as that monster, but with different names from each other and that monster. And then you cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect. Most of the time when you're using this card, you're hopefully getting it on your first turn, so you can easily set up a nice board. Of course, you can summon things like Aria, Cannon, Soprano, Tam Tam, all straight from your deck. You can even potentially summon out an Honest and use this on-field effect to return it back to your hand, so you can use it for your next turn. So Ties of the Brethren is fantastic for us swarming the field, and it helps us generate a bit of advantage as well, so it's kind of nice. Alright, so moving on, we are also playing 2 copies of Transmodify. And I kind of explained this when we were going over the monsters, but Transmodify allows you to change your Sonata into a Soprano, and then Soprano can activate its effects. She'll special summon, you can add the Sonata from your graveyard back to your hand, summoning it again, and then going for a fusion play. So that's kind of nice. You can also Transmodify any of your level 4 monsters into your Elegy, and then Elegy provides you protection from board wipes. So Transmodify is kind of a versatile card, and of course you can always transmodify your Shiberta, which is your fusion monster, and summon out Chopina, as I mentioned earlier as well. The next card that we play is 1 copy of Polymerization. Polymerization is just a target for Tam Tam. She can add it from the deck or the graveyard to your hand, so that's kind of nice, although Tam Tam's effect has a bunch of restrictions on it, but it's pretty easy to get it off if you're using Ties of the Brethren to summon her from your deck. Okay, then the next card that we play is going to be 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Pot of Desires adds a lot of necessary draw power to the deck, and even though we play some one-ofs like Elegy and Chopina, they aren't crucial for us in order to win the game. So Pot of Desires, it really doesn't matter if you banish those cards. We play 3-ofs of all the important cards so that you minimize the chances of banishing all of them. Pot of Desires is just fantastic for a slow deck like this, and it helps you potentially draw into some more combo pieces. Okay, so the last spell card that we play in this deck is 2 copies of Scapegoat, and Scapegoat is fantastic in this deck because you don't really do much on your opponent's turn, and if you do eventually get board wiped when your opponent draws into Dark Hole Raigeki, something like that, if you don't have an Elegy out, Scapegoat is a great way to deter attacks from your opponent, just blocking some potential damage. Scapegoat's also great for going into Link monsters because Melodious have a difficult time maintaining resources. You don't really want to use all of your monsters to go for Link summons. Scapegoat helps put bodies on the field so you can actually go for those, which is really, really nice. Okay, so yeah, that does it for all the spell cards. Next off, we're going to go into the trap cards. Alright, so moving on into the trap card. Starting off, we were playing 2 copies of Back to the Front. Back to the Front is a much better version of Revival compared to Call the Haunted and Powerful Rebirth because it's not a continuous trap card, which means you can chain it to things that your opponent's using to try and destroy your back row, like Cosmic Cyclone, Mystical Space Typhoon, Twin Twisters, and you can just bring back any monster without a level restriction either back to your side of the field. The only restriction is that you have to summon it in defense position, but that really doesn't matter because if you have an Aria on the field, your stuff cannot be destroyed by battle anyway. So this is a great way to get back things like Elegy, Chopina, even your fusion monsters like Shiberta or Bloom Diva. So this is a fantastic way to recover your board, and I only play 2 of them because I don't want them to clog. Alright, so moving on, the last trap that we play in this deck is going to be 3 copies of Solemn Strike. This is really self-explanatory because Solemn Strike allows you to stop your opponent's major plays. You know, their big boss monsters are summoning out. You can even stop potential hand traps and anything that can basically hinder you. So Solemn Strike is a fantastic card, especially because things like Borlo Dragon are very easy for your opponent to summon, and they can just potentially break your Aria lock on your side of the field. Having Solemn Strike for big powerful monsters like that is just very crucial for this deck. Alright, so that does it for the main deck. Next off, we're going to go into the side deck. Alright, so for the side deck, starting off, we are playing 1 copy of Barrier Statue of the Heavens. Now, this card is a fantastic floodgate against any deck that doesn't primarily play light monsters. It prevents all monsters from being special summoned unless they are light, and it is very easy for us to tutor out because we play Ties of the Brethren in our main deck. With Ties of the Brethren, you can summon out this Barrier Statue of the Heavens alongside something like Honest, and then you can use Honest on-field effect to return itself from the field to the hand, so you have it to use to protect this barrier statue. That's mostly because this barrier statue only has 1,000 attack, so it's fairly easy for your opponent to just normal something, run over it, go into the main phase 2, and then go for all their special summons then. So having the Honest in the hand just protects this card from just being destroyed by battle, and it forces your opponent to rely on generic spell and trap removal like Dark Hole, Raigeki, and things like that, which are usually not searchable in order to get rid of it. So it can potentially just end games right then and there if you get it out. Alright, so next off we're going to move on into some of our own generic spell and trap removal. So we're playing 1 copy of Dark Hole. Dark Hole is, again, just fantastic for siding in when you're going second. You can easily just clear out your opponent's boards before trying to go and establish your own. And of course, in conjunction with that, you also play 1 copy of Raigeki, which is better for late game when you have your own established boards. But the thing about Dark Hole is that if you have Elegy on the field anyway, it protects all of your Melodious monsters from it, so it's potentially just another Raigeki if you have your Elegy out. Those 2 cards are really good siding in when you're going second. The next card that I play is 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. This is our spell and trap removal in the deck. You can potentially replace this with things like Mystical Space Typhoon. I wouldn't recommend Twin Twisters because we don't have enough advantage being generated, and we don't benefit at all from cards being discarded. So that's why Cosmic Cyclone and MST are just more resourceful, and it helps you maintain your advantage. Now, I prefer Cosmic Cyclone over Mystical Space Typhoon because in the Magician matchup, you want to banish your opponent's Pendulum Scales. Because of the fact that the Magicians float when they are destroyed either by battle or by card effects, so you don't want them to get additional advantage while you're trying to disrupt their plays. This also makes sure that the pendulum monsters don't float, so that they don't go to the extra deck and can be pendulum summoned back on a later turn. So Cosmic Cyclone is really great in that regard. It also helps get rid of floating spell and trap cards, things that get effects when they're in the graveyard. They can potentially banish it and get an additional effect, or archetypes that recycle their spell and trap cards from the graveyard, things like Magi Bullets, where they can just add their counter traps and trap cards from their graveyard back to their hand so they can reuse them. This puts them out of circulation so your opponent cannot access those cards for the rest of the duel, and it's just a very, very good card overall, despite the life point cost. Okay, so next off, we're going to go into some of the floodgates that are run in the side deck. Starting off, we're playing 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. This is a very good floodgate right now, where each player can only control 1 type of monster on their side of the field, and they have to send all other face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. This is very good for us because we only mostly play fairy-type monsters in the deck, at least in the main deck. So Rivalry of Warlords actually potentially locks our opponent out from going into their additional plays, especially because a lot of Link monsters now are like Cybers type. They're starting to branch out a little bit in terms of diversity in the types, but most main deck monsters aren't going to be Cybers monsters because those aren't the meta archetypes. So against those types of decks, you have a very good advantage by locking them out with this floodgate. An example of this would probably be something like Royal Chalice, where it's very popular in the casual front and has a little bit of potential in the meta front, although they are very easily disrupted with other cards. But if you run into those at your locals or something, Rivalry of Warlords is definitely a very good card to side against them. Next card we play is 3 copies of Mistake, and as you could probably tell from the main deck, we don't have a lot of consistency or ways to search out cards that we need. So because we lack the ability to search, we can easily hinder our opponent with cards like Mistake, where neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand. And because we really only search with like Tam Tam for polymerization, if you don't want that conflicting with our Mistake over here, you can always side out the Tam Tam polymerization for something like this. This is just a fantastic card and blocks a lot of decks, especially the newer archetypes, because they seem to have a lot of built-in searching, things like Trick Stars, Spirals, things like that. You can always hinder their consistency. Okay, so the next card that we play is 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier, and this is a catch-all floodgate that is so busted, and I honestly hate this card, but because they haven't hit it yet, it's worth running. So you can potentially block your opponent out of Pendulums, Fusions, XYZs, and Synchros, and so against things like Pendulum Magicians, it's very easy to stop them from Pendulum Summoning or going for a huge Field Swarm. You can easily block your opponent out from XYZs, Synchros, depending on what their deck specializes in. This is just a catch-all floodgate card, and it's so good. And because it got reprinted, it's also fairly affordable as well. So yeah, that does it for the side deck. Next off, we're going to go into the extra deck. Alright, so for the extra deck, starting off, we are playing 2 copies of Link Spider. Now, Link Spider is fantastic in this deck because it changes some of our tokens into effect monsters for our scapegoat tokens. And because some of the other Link monsters that we play require effect monsters, this is an easy way to satisfy that condition without having to sacrifice our Melodious monsters that are on our side of the field. So the next Link monster that we play is going to be 1 copy of Proxy Dragon, and Proxy Dragon's really here because it's generic and it has left and right arrows, which are very nice. You can summon the Proxy Dragon right under the Link Spider, and it opens up the left and right monster zones next to it, so you can summon your potential fusions, XYZs, and all that good stuff there. So that's why it's pretty good. The next Link monster that we play is going to be Gaia Saber, the Lightning Shadow, and the reason why I play this, this is actually really good for clearing out the extra monster zone. So let's say you have an extra deck monster like Shiberta, Fairy Cheer Girl, something like that, that's clogging up your zone. If you activate Scapegoat, it gives you 4 tokens, so you can use 2 of the tokens and whatever monsters in your extra monster zone and make the Gaia Saber, and Gaia Saber has a down arrow, which is very nice because now you have a way to summon another extra deck monster that you might need in that situation. So you can easily toolbox out with the Gaia Saber. And because you're using the monster in your extra monster zone and 2 of your tokens, you still have 2 scapegoat tokens left over. So you could also potentially make a Proxy Dragon under the Gaia Saber and then open up 2 potential extra deck plays. So that's why it's very good in terms of versatility for this deck. Okay, so the last Link monster that I play, I actually don't have a copy of right now, but it is going to be Borreload Dragon, and Borreload is a fantastic monster. It's so good, because it helps you attack over things that you probably wouldn't be able to attack over otherwise, because it can potentially target a monster your opponent controls and lower its attack by 500, so it makes it easier to attack over things, and also if you attack into something, you can just steal that opponent's monster, and you can potentially use it for your own benefit, or you can just link summon away with it and make some other stuff. But it's a fantastic card. It's generic, and that's the reason why I play Link Spiders here, because it turns your scapegoat tokens into effect monsters, and Borreload needs 3 or more effect monsters in order to summon. So one scapegoat can potentially summon 2 Link Spiders and a Proxy Dragon, and that is enough to easily go into a Borreload. So one scapegoat turns into a huge boss monster that can steal your opponent's monsters, can lower their attack points. It's just too good to pass up. So that does it for the Link monsters. Next off, we're going to go into the XYZs. So for the XYZs, starting off, we were playing 1 copy of Fairy Cheer Girl. And Fairy Cheer Girl, I found to be pretty nice because it gives you some additional draw power. I didn't run Bujinte Tsukiyomi because I found that in most cases, I don't want to get rid of my entire hand to go for 2 draws, even though it's not too difficult to get 1 card in your hand to pitch with the Tsukiyomi, but I found that it doesn't really come up too often. I missed having Fairy Cheer Girl in the extra deck because she was just a more consistent source of draw power compared to Tsukiyomi. Okay, so next card that I play is number 82, Heartland Draco, and this is mostly because sometimes we have our opponent down pretty low on life points, or they're just using things like Solemn Strikes, Cosmic Cyclones, things like that, and they're burning themselves down. So Heartland Draco is a fantastic way for us to just bypass their entire field and just attack them directly to finish off the game. With 2,000 attack, it's actually really, really lethal, and most people won't expect it coming out because it's not a very popular extra deck card. Okay, so the next card that I play is number 41, Baguska, the Terribly Tired Tapir. And Baguska is just a fantastic generic floodgate that we can summon. It can just block out all your opponent's monster effects that happen on the field because it switches them all to defense position. And it's a great way to help buy you some time if you don't have, let's say, Aria or something established on your field yet. Now, the thing is, this only negates activated effects. So even though Baguska is sitting on the field, if your Aria is there as well, her protection effects like from targeting and from battle still apply. So that's why it's very nice and has a bit of synergy with the deck as well. Okay, so next card that I play is going to be one copy of Tornado Dragon. It's just way too good not to play right now, especially because you can easily use it on your opponent's turn as a quick effect. So you can destroy potential things like field spells, you can hit their back row during their end phase, and because we're not main decking spell and trap removal like our Cosmic Cyclones and MSTs, Tornado Dragon is just a fantastic access to that during our first game. And then to wrap up the XYZs that we play, we're playing one copy of number 39, Utopia. And because we're playing Utopia, you know that we have to play number S39, Utopia the Lightning. I found that Utopia Lightning is actually really good for finishing off the games. There's not really too many boss monsters that you need Utopia to attack over now. There's not too many towers and stuff in the game. Even though Masterpiece and stuff like that exists, True Dracos have a very bad matchup against Melodious because they can't get over Aria without the Monarch Stormforth. So Utopia Lightning is just really good for finishing off the game, attacking over something that your Melodious monsters can't attack over at the time. It's just a good toolbox option overall. Alright, so that does it for the XYZ monsters. Next off, we're going to go into the fusions. So for the fusions, starting off, we were playing two copies of Schuberta, the Melodious Maestra. I found that two Schuberta is completely fine. You never really need to see the third one, and you can always put them back into your extra deck by using something like Soprano's Effect. So Schuberta is a very great disruption against your opponent's graveyards, so you can, during either player's turn, target 3 cards in either player's graveyard and banish them, and she becomes a 3,000 attack beat stick, which is very, very nice. And if Aria is on the field, she could potentially crash into other 3,000 attack beat sticks while being completely protected from destruction by battle. So Schuberta is a fantastic addition to the extra deck. The next card that I play is one copy of Bloom Prima, the Melodious Choir. Now, the reason I play this card is actually because she's fantastic if you draw into like your Chopina and you have your polymerization that you searched out with Tam Tam, because then what you can do is you can just fuse away the Chopina and the Tam Tam for your Bloom Prima, and she can attack twice, so she has some synergy with Honest as well. You can gain a bunch of attack points by attacking to your opponent's monster, and then she has a second attack where she maintains that attack boost from Honest, and you can potentially swing for a massive amount of damage, if not game. And she also has the effect where she leaves the field. You can add one Melodious monster from your graveyard back to your hand, so you can potentially link someone away with her, and she generates some advantage back to you, so that's kind of nice. And last but not least, we are playing one copy of Bloom Diva, the Melodious Choir. We only need one copy of this because, again, you can recycle it with things like Soprano, but you can also bring it back, all these fusions actually, you can bring them back with back to the front. So Bloom Diva is just a fantastic way for us to out large boss monsters, special summon monsters. She also has built-in protection from destruction by card effects and by battle, so that's very nice. And she's also allows us to inflict some burn damage to the opponent as well. So she's a fantastic boss monster overall, just a little bit difficult to summon, but because we have Tam Tam, Polymerization, Soprano, and potentially if you ever draw into Chopina or you send her to the graveyard somehow and bring her back to the front, it's not too difficult to bring out. But yeah, anyway, that does it for the extra deck, and that does it for the deck profile. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please leave a like, subscribe for more Melodious content, and leave a comment down below letting me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.